So in my profession, you learn from the mistakes you make, and what you're about to see and what we're some language that we're about to introduce to the passing game comes from something I learned by watching our playoff game this last year. And what happens is 100% my fault as a coach and 0% player's fault, because the player is doing exactly what he was coached to do. And I realized in watching this that I needed to find a better way to coach it. So the route design here is at the top. We're running what we call Florida, which is a double post. It's a glance concept. So again, this is not as important to the discussion, but it will help. He's running a post to hold this safety. Jamal's running a glance. We're trying to win, but we have a drag route coming from the backside that is the quarterback's next place to look if the original route doesn't work out. Well, if you watch the receiver at the bottom, he does exactly what he thinks he's supposed to, which is show face, go face off of this linebacker. If you don't know what show face, go face is yet, don't worry, you'll learn soon enough. This receiver does exactly what he was coached to do by me. But if you watch, if this receiver had gone beyond this linebacker before he executed the show face, go face, he would have had open space to run in, and the quarterback could have thrown to him on the dead run, and probably we score a touchdown on this play instead of we turn it over at the end. See how this is a show face, go face. In other words, he settles because he sees that linebacker in front of him. But if I had a way to tell that receiver, hey, don't do anything, don't make any decision until you're past this linebacker, if I had a simple way for him to understand that, then he could do his job more effectively, and this route would work much better. So again, just watch. If he keeps running, he would beat this linebacker, no doubt, and he would have caught the ball right in the space up here by the hash. So I learned that we had to have a better way to describe the windows in between defenders on the field, and that's why we created this language that you're about to see. So if the first part of this lesson was about, okay, here's some terminology to describe surfaces of our formation, slot surfaces, alley surfaces, nub surfaces. So that's the first part of what we've done, this part. The second part was then, okay, let's talk about the areas that defenders work to, hooks and flats and curl zones, and how they operate in those areas. Now we're going to talk about the next layer of this is going to be talking about what are the words we use to describe the areas in between those different defenders who are working in underneath coverage. Okay, so we've gone from talking about us to talking about them to talking about us getting in between them is sort of how this is spacing out. So the purpose of this is to make sure that we can have the kind of spacing on our routes that gets people open no matter what you're seeing, okay? And understanding that there are different spots on the field we want to get to depending on what we're doing. So I'm just showing you a general sense of, hey, here are the potential windows that you may be able to work into. Okay? In any given route, no matter where you are in the formation, here are the windows. Every single dot represents a space between a defender and another defender, or between a defender and the sideline. These are just some general areas that naturally occur in any defense. It really doesn't matter if it's a man defense or a zone defense, although we tend to be talking more about zone coverages. That's not really the point. The point is, here are places that you can get in between people or outside of people on the field. So how do we create a language that you can relate to know where to get and where not to get? And this just gives you more detail. One spot is the same side in between the ball, in between the center, and the nearest drop player, whoever that is, usually a linebacker. Okay. The next space would be the same side that you're on, wherever you are. In this case, we're talking about a receiver on the right. It could be this tight end or this receiver. It could be a defender on the same side as you. It could be on the same side as you are between the first and second dropper. So if I say that This is the first dropper, the closest dropper to the ball, and the next guy, the hang, is number 2. That, whatever space we're talking about, is in between those two guys. The next space we can talk about is on the same side, but it's outside the second dropper, essentially in the flat to the side where you're on. We could also talk about space opposite on the other side. So now we've gone to the other side of the center, the other side of the ball, and we've taken that first window between the other side of the ball and the first linebacker or first person we find dropping over there. Or it could be on the side away from you between the first and second dropper, or it could be on the side away from you all the way past the second dropper, essentially another way of saying the flat on the other side of the ball. These are open spaces that we're trying to get into. So now how do we build a visual language for those things? Well, what we're going to use is imagining a map of the United States. So just imagine a basic map of the United States. Imagine that the hang player, and it doesn't matter, again, this doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a tight end, a slot receiver, an outside receiver, a running back. Just imagine that whoever the person is that's the hang or the second dropper, just imagine that they're Ohio. We're just trying to create a reference point here. Now imagine that the sideline on your side is like the Atlantic Ocean. The sideline away from your side is the Pacific Ocean, and that the ball is like the Mississippi River. Now, we're talking about a receiver on the right, how he would imagine all these windows. If you were a receiver on the left, you would imagine everything opposite. If I'm a receiver on the right, the hang dropper's like Ohio. The Atlantic Ocean is the far sideline to my side. Pacific Ocean is away from my side. The Mississippi River is over the ball. So now we start thinking about these different windows as other states. And those other states will kind of line up relative to where Ohio is, where the second dropper on your side of the ball. This will make more sense when I show you some examples. So there's a map of the United States, okay? And so what you're going to do in a minute is you're going to see how this map relates to these different spots on the field. Jersey, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Wyoming, and then eventually Oregon. Okay, so hold that picture in your mind. And now let's talk about these spots and these windows. And then I'll put it into some practical use. Okay, so what we're going to say is that the window in between the first and second dropper on your side, in this case the right, but it could just as easily be on the left if you lined up on the left, is the Indiana window. If we tell you to work in the Indiana window, we're saying work between the overhang or the second dropper on your side and the tightest dropper or the dropper closest to the ball on your side. If we say work in the Illinois window, and you see all these states kind of correspond with where they would be on a map, if you buy into the idea that that second dropper is Ohio. Illinois window means you work in that window inside the tightest dropper between him and the ball, between him and the center. The Illinois window, the Iowa window means I'm now across the Mississippi River. I'm opposite side of the ball, but I'm in that inside-most window between the ball and that first dropper. Sometimes we'll tell you can win in either the Iowa or the Illinois window. Sometimes we'll tell you to win in one or the other when we coach you. The Wyoming window, you can see we're going a little further west, is now between the first and second dropper on the side opposite you. And then you go all the way out west, closest to the Pacific Ocean, and that's the Oregon window, which means past the furthest dropper, past the second dropper on the far side. So these are kind of the reference points we use in talking about where do we get to on a route.